It started like something out of a movie, except this was real. A cop, dressed in uniform but with a red MAGA hat perched on his head, broke into a U.S. general's safe, thinking he was about to uncover something big. Maybe classified documents, maybe stacks of cash. Who knows what was running through his mind? But what he didn't expect was what happened next. As he fiddled with the lock, the tension in the room thickened. He finally got the safe open, but just as he leaned in, something exploded in his face. Bright, blinding paint sprayed everywhere. In an instant, his plan had gone from secretive to chaotic. The mess, the noise, and now the real question: who set the trap? And more importantly, what was so important inside that safe that someone had to rig it? Stick around, because this story is just getting started. The officer staggered back, paint dripping from his face and uniform. He wiped at his eyes, trying to clear his vision, but the thick spray clung to his skin like glue. His heart pounded. He had expected a jackpot inside that safe, not a trap. But who set it? And why? As he blinked through the mess, his mind raced. The general wasn't just any military man. He was someone with deep ties to national security, someone who had spent decades guarding high-level secrets. Had the cop stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see, or had the general already suspected someone would come snooping? Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. The officer froze. He wasn't alone. Was it the general himself, a security team? Or worse, someone who knew exactly what was in that safe and wasn't about to let him leave with the truth? The officer held his breath, his pulse hammering in his ears. The house had been dead silent when he broke in, no alarms, no signs of movement. But now, with paint dripping down his face and stinging his eyes, he knew he wasn't alone. Slowly, he reached for his radio, but his fingers were slick, struggling to get a grip. Another creak, closer this time. Was it the general? If so, why hadn't he confronted him yet? Or was it someone else, someone who had been waiting in the shadows watching? The officer swallowed hard. He hadn't planned for this. He had thought the hardest part would be cracking the safe, slipping out unnoticed. But now everything was spiraling out of control. Then, footsteps, deliberate, steady, moving toward him. He glanced toward the doorway, but the dim light made it impossible to see clearly. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet wouldn't move. Whoever was there, they wanted him to know they were coming. The officer's breath came in short, shallow gasps. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway. You could hear it now, someone breathing, slow, controlled. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They wanted him to feel it, the weight of being trapped, the tension of not knowing what would happen next. His mind raced through his options. He could make a break for it, but his vision was still blurred from the paint. His radio was useless now, slippery and streaked with red. He reached for his gun, but before his fingers could wrap around the grip, click, a light flicked on. The dim yellow glow barely cut through the darkness, but it was enough. A shadow moved in the doorway, just out of reach. The figure stood still, watching, studying. Then, a voice. Calm, measured. You picked the wrong safe. The officer's stomach dropped. His cover was blown. But the real question was, how much did they already know? The officer's muscles tensed. The voice was steady, unreadable. Whoever was standing in the doorway wasn't panicked. They weren't reaching for a weapon. They had the upper hand, and they knew it. Blinking through the paint, he tried to make out the figure, but the dim light cast long shadows, keeping their face hidden. He could hear the faint rustling of fabric, the shift of weight as the person took a slow step forward. Then another. I don't know who sent you, the voice continued, but you made a mistake. The officer swallowed hard. No one had sent him. Not officially. He had been acting on a tip, a whisper that the general was hiding something explosive, something that could shift power in ways no one was ready for. But now, standing here, dripping in red, he realized the real secret wasn't in the safe. It was standing right in front of him. Then the air shifted, Another sound, behind him this time. Soft. Quick. A presence he hadn't noticed before. His blood ran cold. He wasn't just caught, he was surrounded. The officer's breath hitched. His instincts screamed that this was a setup, one he had walked straight into. The figure in front of him remained still, but the presence behind him was moving. Slow, purposeful. Then a hand gripped his shoulder, firm, icy. Before he could react, a voice, different from the first, spoke softly near his ear. "You really have no idea what you stepped into, do you?" His fingers twitched toward his gun, but before he could draw, the figure in front of him stepped forward, finally revealing their face. The officer's stomach twisted. It wasn't the general. It wasn't even someone he recognized. It was worse, someone who wasn't supposed to exist. Someone erased from official records. The realization hit him like a gut punch. This wasn't just about the safe. He hadn't been the hunter. He had been the bait. And now, whatever he had stumbled into was far bigger than he ever imagined. The officer's pulse pounded as the truth settled in. This wasn't about classified documents or stolen money. The safe had been a trap, but not for him, for whoever had sent that tip. He had walked straight into a game he didn't even know he was playing. The figure in front of him gave a small, knowing smile. You were never going to find what you were looking for. The grip on his shoulder loosened. The presence behind him stepped back. No threats, no handcuffs, just silence. The message was clear. They weren't here to kill him. They wanted him to understand something. This wasn't his fight. Not yet. With no other choice, he turned and walked away, paint still dripping from his uniform. He had come looking for secrets, but instead, he had found something far more dangerous. And the worst part, he knew this wasn't over.